Super excited to have Ric Beardsley, Syracuse men's lacrosse legend in our eyes. Rick, thank you so much for taking the time and hopping back on the Ostrom Avenue podcast.
Always a pleasure. In your eyes, there's four sets right there. So if I'm good in, I'm good in like just four eyes, I'm golden now. So that's good. How are you guys doing today? All right.
We're doing good, thick of lacrosse season. Just as I've become a lacrosse neutral since I've come up here to Syracuse. I just think every weekend there's some thrilling games. I know they had the stuff in Atlanta. Have you been keeping tabs on all the action? I know we're kind of getting into the thick of the season now.
Yeah. Everybody asks me what I do for a living. Sorry, I don't know how to turn off emails, by the way. Like I'm that old. They didn't even have email when I was there where you guys are. But I've been in, when people ask me what I do, I just tell them I do lacrosse. So I have, a lacrosse training business, which I do all over the tri-state area. I have a clinic, it's sold out on Long Island Friday, and then I'm going to coach at Darien during the spring, and I sell apparel into the lacrosse industry. So I'm always around it. Yes. So I pay attention. Plus, I have a daughter who plays lacrosse at Stony Brook for Big Joe Spalina. So like tomorrow, I'm driving to Rutgers in the morning to change the game to one. But I have been, and I do keep up on lacrosse. It is my, obviously my most favorite thing. Little known facts like guys like Mike Levine, who's a partner in CAA, was a college lacrosse player. Guy guarded in high school. Now he's the managing director of CAA, and all the, Carmelo's agent and all those guys. And, so lacrosse guys were all over the place. But yes, I have been keeping up. Those Atlanta games were crazy. The ACC Ivy Challenge was nuts. I will be going out to dinner with Jay Alter on Sunday here, right in Syracuse. He called me. Went to dinner last night with Joey Spalina, Bill Dwan, and Dylan Skeeter. At a local place here, and so guys, I am well versed in what's going on, and you are correct. It is a great time for lacrosse. It is a great time to be a lacrosse fan. And for you guys, it's a good time to be in college because that sport, if you know it, it will, could help advance your career, in the broadcasting side of things.
A lot of expectations going into the season for Syracuse. Couple of early losses. Were you surprised by that? What surprised you most about those two losses early in the season?
Well, to answer your question, yes. Was I surprised? Yes, absolutely. But I do know that's, sometimes you lose games, sometimes you win games, and, whoever comes out on top that day is obviously the winner. Some things that stuck out, at least in the Maryland game, some not adjustments, some non-adjustments out of halftime, where Maryland made some key adjustments in order to win that game. Everybody talked about the goaltending of Logan McEnany, McNerney. I mean, the truth is, you're, the reigning goalie of the year. You're probably, I mean, you're a second team All-American goalie. You're the preseason first teamer. Entenmann obviously has graduated from Notre Dame. You're supposed to make those saves. So maybe it was, Syracuse shot poorly, or, I mean, everybody makes excuses. And like I said, like I go to lunch, go to dinner, I'm very close with those kids. They don't make excuses about anything. They just keep playing. I think it's us fans that want to make the excuses for everybody. I think the Harvard game was a game of, it was a game of a goalie, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when he first saw those five shots that went in, and then next thing you know, he settled in, and Harvard's game plan was really played well against Syracuse. I don't think Syracuse saw some things. I was asked at another podcast or on radio, have I ever seen a team lose a game by one, winning that many faceoffs? And I can't say I have. So my biggest standout has been, number one, lacrosse parity. There's a ton of that. But number two, there's been a lack of, some adjustments, I think, that could have been done. But again, I'm not in that locker room. I'm not the one writing the game plan. I have coached at a high level in the PLL in high school and college. And, I just think, there are things that Syracuse is continuing to grow with. You're out, Roa sits out that game. That's a key Dodger at the midfield. I think, they didn't recognize some things. They slid a little too fast in the first half against the matchups. I think he can go slower to poles and a little faster to shorties. I think also another thing that sticks out to me, guys, is just rotations, meaning 19, I forget the kid's name. He went from the third midfield to the first. And I would have liked to see The freshman 88 Anderson, get a shot also during that game against Harvard because he's just a bigger and guys, I'm not saying anything negative against small people or it's just a big human being game. It's a big, fast, strong game now. And you have to have that. But I would like to see him, Peyton Anderson get a little more run. But again, like I said, I'm here on a podcast as Ric Beardsley, and I'm not anybody affiliated with that staff except for a guy who's, won a lot of games in Orange.
And you kind of mentioned those adjustments, and I know you just said it. You're not in that locker room, but do you think Coach Gate could, maybe be doing some things differently, or is it just about those kind of in game? It's going to either go your way or not.
I don't really think it's Coach Gate. I think you're taking as a head coach, you're overseeing and ultimately, obviously, you could be at fault for anything. And I'm not saying anybody's at fault. I think you listen to what your offensive coordinator goes and sees. You're looking at film. There's obviously technology involved in this. Like I said, I think when you're winning at halftime, I do think people get complacent, or usually the adage is like when you're winning at halftime, you're rougher on your team. When you're losing at halftime, you're calmer on your team because you don't want them to lose that edge. Maybe it's the case of Syracuse, maybe they couldn't understand why Harvard wouldn't go away, right? It just seemed to me, I don't know what you guys, I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say. You watch a lot of sports all the time and in all different sports here, but like, it seemed to me and a few guys who were sitting in a box at Galaxy Communications that our buddy Pat gets for us, a few alumni like Charlie Lockwood and Jamie Archer. It seemed like it just was a Harvard team that wanted it more. They were willing to get hit with shots. They were taking, and again, that's not on. I can't really say that those kids don't want to win at Syracuse. I know them well, and they're great, great young men. And no one really goes. I used to always say when I was on radio, guys, like, do you really think that someone goes out to lose? Like you go to the game and I can't wait to lose. It's like, you get in a car accident when you're 16, right? I'm sure you guys have been in accidents. I hope you don't. But I remember my father screamed at me. I hit a guy at 16 years old and he yelled and screamed at me. And I said, Dad, did you think I wanted to hit that guy? You think I wanted to put my life in jeopardy in his? So, I mean, I'm interested. I really am interested in what you think and I'm not trying to dodge a question. I just think there's a lot more that goes into it. And there's things that people see. There's also a game plan. You might be stubborn to go off the game plan because you're winning. But it just seemed to me, nothing against Harvard. They are a very good team. We keep downplaying that like Harvard is not good. They are good. And they were long on defense. They made up for losing face-off. So, I mean, that to me, it just seemed like they wanted it more.
I agree with you. And I think when I looked at the schedule, I was worried about that Townsend game early in the season because I know Townsend, that's a good team.
Actually. They hung with Hop in that first game.
Exactly. And I was worried that maybe the team would underlook that game. They didn't. They cruised past them fairly comfortably. I think it was honestly a situation where they looked at Harvard. And like you said, Harvard's a good program. They know what they're doing up there. I think it was a case where maybe it was a little bit, they just kind of underestimated them. Or either that or they got comfortable. And I think that happens no matter what sport you're playing. If you get comfortable in the first half, don't have that same urgency to maybe start a quarter, next thing you know, 1-2 goals go in. And they certainly gave, especially the goalie, they certainly gave him a lot of confidence. The more saves he's got, it seemed harder and harder.
He's a great goalie. He's a very good goalie. So we can't take that along. He's going to be, the Ivies tend to have those great goalies like, Emmett Carroll who at UPenn. He's a kid that could have went anywhere. He chose to go get that Ivy League education, not like us, us private school kids who maybe, I know I couldn't have gotten to any Ivy League guys, but maybe you guys could have. But, that's a whole thing. It's tough. Again, this day and age, a lot of parity. There's a lot of different techniques. And Jerry Byrne is a great coach. And they had a great, what's overlooked on Harvard is their offense. It really functions at a really high level, meaning it's not chunky. What I say by chunky, I always say like chunky means like it's not chunky's like not fluid to me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse's offense in the beginning of the year, especially against Vermont in the beginning, was like when they went against a zone, they were chunky, right? There was no flow to it. Harvard's offense flowed extremely well. And that's, very good coaching, obviously intelligent players, discipline, great athletes. But yeah, it's getting tough in this day and age, to sustain and blow teams out. I do think personally, if you want to ask me, you're not going to ask me about it, but I do think that Syracuse will run over. I just feel it in my gut. I don't think the quirky things that Colgate does will really bother Syracuse. I mean, if you're not going to play the ball behind, I think you get picked apart with double dives on the crease like it has been before. I think, you create matchup issues all over the field. I think just athletically, Syracuse has way too much for them. But I've been wrong before.
And after that Maryland game, I was looking for Syracuse to come out strong. I thought they got pushed around. They did by the Terrapins. And so I was expecting a dominant performance against Harvard. And when that didn't happen, I was like, well, like I had to take a step back and look at it. And what is this Syracuse team capable of? And then obviously a good win out in Utah. Definitely a couple of things that did not go great or well.
Yep.
But in your eyes, what is this team capable of postseason? From what you've seen and where they can be, what are they capable of?
I think the biggest thing they could fix right now, if they fix it, they're a Final Four team, is, and I said it earlier in the conversation about there's a lot of interchangeable things going on. So I often believe that the team with the best defensive midfield unit goes the furthest in the playoffs. And that's just the way it seems to work. And Syracuse has 4 very good short sticks D midfielders, and they run a rotation. I think they need to find those 2 shorties and give those guys more consistency, right? And then find that pole instead of like, Billy Dwan going to the wing, and then you have Kakemo going to the wing. Like Nick is really probably more comfortable down low because he's traditionally been a defensive close defense. I just know from playing the position, I can speak pretty well to that. You're so used to having your eyes face the ball versus your back facing, like midfield. So it just flips you a little bit. And there's so much room to run. I think that, those guys, those types of things you have to find. I mean, I think you have to find that blend. And again, guys, the good thing is it's early in the year. Now, did we think Syracuse would take that loss against Harvard? No. So that puts their backs up against the wall a little bit, right? Obviously, you lose another one. Now you got to depend on strength of schedule, how you play out in the ACC. But it doesn't get any easier coming up, especially, like I said, I do think they'll handle Colgate. And if the Colgate guys are listening, hey, boys, that's just my opinion. I do think you're going to get, shit stomped, but that's just me. And you can take this tape and put it in the locker room, Coach Carwick, and be like, an alumnus said this. Well, I'm not playing the game, guys. So I know that, like, if we played Colgate in my era, we would shit stomp you. So it'd be very simple. But I also had Hall of Famers all over my team. But yes, I do think that Syracuse right now, you can't really afford to lose or have a bad showing. And the Utah game started out great. Got to be able to sustain it. But I did know that they made some subs and let some young guys play. So, I used to have the philosophy, like I had an athletic director who was right down the street at Buddy Wiklinski at CBA. And he's a legendary basketball coach in New York State, legendary athletic director, Hall of Famer. He used to always say, Coach, it really doesn't matter if you win by 12 or you win by 1, it's a win. And, sometimes when I would have games in hand and I would just clear benches and I wouldn't say a word if they chunked away a 15-goal lead to 3. I didn't even panic. I just was like, okay, clock, here we go. 3, let's manage. Let's not pull these guys, embarrass them. And I think Syracuse kind of did that against Utah, and I'm not saying against Utah. I think Utah was a little shell-shocked of a Syracuse team that was a little angry and came out hard.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Rick's bringing the trash talk on the podcast. I love that.
I'm not. Listen, guys, look at my resume. I'm going to say it's not an arrogant thing. My resume is probably a Hall of Fame resume, right? I'm a Hall of Famer on paper, but when you have said the things I've said to college coaches during your career, if you've flicked off 2 college coaches in games, you've mooned the crowd, you've talked as much, crap as I have, you're on the ballot and it just tends to go right by you. And I have at this point understood, guys, that I am who I am. I call myself, an NFE. I'm not for everyone. I'm just not. I do love and am very passionate about lacrosse. I'm very passionate about the things I say, and I have a lot of energy. And I love Gary Gate. I love, I love the guys up at Cuse. I'm very proud to be an alumnus at Syracuse, and I'm proud to be on this podcast. I mean, just looking up above behind you, having the Syracuse flags, guys, that's something that's great, right? That's something that you'll have forever. And I owe a lot to the university. I live here still, and I love it. But yes, I will talk whatever I feel. I am well beyond that point in my life of worrying about hurting people's feelings who I'm playing against, because that's the problem. You don't need to be nice. Like, a lot of guys want to recruit the guy who people don't like. Like, I'd much rather be the guy people don't like. And then, you know what? I got the wins, right? So I think if, maybe if they took that attitude more, I don't know. So we'll see. But yes, I will talk as much shit as you like. Don't want to curse that much because I know we can't do that. I don't want to be yelled at by Professor Infante or Adjunct Professor Axe for doing anything wrong here on this podcast up at the Newhouse School of Communications. And what is it? Who is it? Ladato he's the dean, right?
Dean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That guy came in as athletic kids, CBA. I think one was a volleyball player, really nice guy. But he's a great dean, doing an incredible job. And you guys, I know, will be future stars. I'll be watching you on television in 5-6 years from now.
We really appreciate that, Rick. And someone that I want to get your honest opinion on is Joey Spallina. I've been a huge supporter of him. I think he's great. I hate the people that say, oh, he doesn't show up in the big games, this and that. I think lacrosse is a team sport, and you've got to have the other guys to lean on. And the Syracuse offense certainly has that, and it's not solely dependent on how many goals or assists Joey Spallina scores.
I mean, you don't have to tell him. I love Joey, not only as a player, but as a kid. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy Joseph a lot. I enjoy his family. His dad is obviously my daughter's college coach. I've known Big Joe for a long time. I know his whole family. I mean, it was good to see like Alexis Spallina the other day. She rolled up. I was at a Stony Brook game out of nowhere. There's 8,000 people. She comes and sits down next to me. And, like, those are things that are awesome. As far as Joey's play, I mean, I think people came in and they're expecting a Mike Powell or a Casey Powell. Well, Casey Powell had around him midfielder of the year, an entire defense that were all Americans, second team and above, a midfield that had an honorable mention, the midfielder of the year, first team All-American, and another second team All-American on the midfield. His attack was Casey Powell, Rob Kavovit, Jimmy Morrissey. They're all All-Americans. Like, Casey didn't draw a 1. He drew a 2 his freshman year. He drew a 3 sometimes. Joey comes in, he's drawing grown men coming out of COVID. And okay, like, you can knock him all you want. He still led the country, for a long time in points, still one of the top scorers. And you know what? Again, it takes a team to win championships. And you're right. It's a big task to win a championship. If it were easy to win championships, everybody'd be a champion. But like Joey, so here's the great things that Joey has. He's an incredible teammate, right? He's an incredible leader. He really is a great finisher. He plays, he sees all facets of the game. Okay, so their biggest gripe about Joey Spallina, and you've heard it 1,000 times, let's put it on the table. He's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, he's not the biggest. Okay, well, I don't know about you, but if you take Joey Spallina off Syracuse and stick him with 2 other All-Americans, like, he'll probably be, and I'm not saying that Owen Hiltz is not good. I'm not saying that Finn Thompson is bad. They're not saying that at all. If you take Joey Spallina, pick him up, stick him in the PLL, he'll be a superstar. Okay? Look what happened in box lacrosse. He was the best American box player in the world. As a college kid, he is the best. There's no ifs, ands. You can't even deny that, guys. He was the only one on that team beside Rezateris that had a clue what was going on. So, I mean, do I think Joey is very deserving of the things he gets? Yes. Do I think he's often criticized? Absolutely. Because Syracuse, before he showed up, was like this, pointing the hill. He was, the car was pointing downhill. And then he started to do this. And, and it's getting like this. But in this day and age, it's tough to go uphill and at a rapid pace. I mean, when you start on the decline, I mean, football, Fran Brown did a great job of turning that around. Now, Kyle McCord. So Kyle McCord, everybody loves. Yeah, he led the country in scoring, but his team wasn't even ranked. We ended up, 19th or 23rd or something. Nobody bitched about Kyle McCord the whole time, but the truth is he had 5 interceptions in a game that they had won against Pitt. They'd have been in the top 10. They'd have been in the playoffs. So it's often a double standard for wearing that number. With Joseph, I think the positives massively outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of weapons around him. Obviously, that whole class, Michael Leo, Finn Thompson, Luke Roa, they've all had their games, but they've all had some games where they've gone a little quiet. And I know you're not going to get a whole team just having one great game every single time. But is it a little concerning that some guys have gone quiet? Peyton Anderson, he's shown flashes, and he's like a unique player that Syracuse didn't have the past couple of seasons, where he's 6'3", he's big, he's fluid, and he's athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to see more of Peyton Anderson? Is there something that Roa, Thompson, and Leo can step up? What does Syracuse need to do offensively to get rid of some of the inconsistencies?
Well, you asked me my opinion, I'll give it. It's really simple. I think to be honest, the ball has to go to 22 more. You people think I'm crazy that are listening. You're like, well, I guarantee someone's like, what is he talking about? Well, it has to touch 22. Okay. You have to go let it evolve and turn the defense around. I also think if you want 22 to score more points, set him up better. Use picks tighter, get it clear outsides. I do think the ball needs to rotate, get through. The one thing that they've always said about Syracuse, they're so unselfish. Oh my God. Well, guys, let me just teach you the little thing about lacrosse. Off a dodge, the best thing anyone can do is push the ball 2 times. Okay. Off a ground ball is to throw 2 passes, move it twice. Okay. Ball moves quicker than people. The problem is after the 2, it goes 3 and it goes 4 and it rotates too much on the outside. So what does that do? That just allows the defense to pack it in and recover to spots. Whereas if it goes 2, you hit a dodge and then create a dive or a cut. That inside they just haven't looked for. And I think like against Harvard, that showed big time. Harvard packed it in, literally said, come beat us one-on-one. They just didn't look inside. The ball is so used to spinning fast. I think it needs to get to 22, slam pick down, come off it, and then rotate on the sides, bang it, and get another hit right away, or play early offense. I think those are the things that need to be done. But again, I don't know personnel as well as everybody else does, but I do know that the basics of lacrosse still stay the same. Pass, dodge or look inside. Pass, dodge or look inside. They have that. And Griffin, you're not wrong. There's some alphas, and sometimes they show up, and then there's betas. It's a good mix to have. But do they create, you have to have someone go to the goal to break down the defense, to create a slide in order to find vacancies within a defensive package. And I think they need to do that more. And you're right. They have to find someone who's bigger, more athletic, but like Roa being out now, Burt Whistle being out. Now, Burt Whistle off-ball guy, we get that, but he still can break a guy down, at least dodge and pass. So those are the types of things. I think it's got to go to 22 more, but maybe I'm biased because I love the kid. I eat wings with the kid once a week. But then I would also say, got to give the ball 35 more. Billy Dwan, my mother cut his parents' hair. I've known their family since we were kids. So, I guess maybe I got that bias, fellas.
You got the lacrosse connections. That's for sure.
Oh, dude, I'm old. Are you kidding me? Of course I do. I've been around it when you work for a living, you do know the guys. But I was very lucky. I was part of a town that was a mecca at one point of college lacrosse players. And those guys above us literally looked out for us young guys. It was one of the greatest things. And I don't know if that gets mimicked in society today enough. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, there you go. Before we let you go, Rick, one last one for you. I'm just looking at the Syracuse schedule right now. Johns Hopkins this weekend. We know that's always a fun one. Then it's, two lighter games you'd think against Manhattan and then Colgate. That end of the road, it's all ACC games and Cornell sandwiched in there too. What's the expectation, especially with that end of the road for Syracuse going into what would hopefully be a long tournament run?
I think you have to win out unless the ACC guys start knocking each other down. The one that scares me the most is Virginia, because Virginia has so much talent and they are absolutely dumping logs in the toilet like no other right now. Okay, fellas? But they're still very dangerous. And if they lose a couple, then say they beat Syracuse, that becomes a bad, bad loss. And you can't have bad losses anymore. I mean, you just can't. And you had a buffer with the Harvard game. Now you don't have a buffer, right? Anymore, I think. I don't think you really do, unless you're going to have an incredible ACC and people in the ACC are going to start knocking each other off. It's going to be a statistical numbers nightmare of who gets in. I think you don't want to face, if UNC's already put it together. I already called that early in the year. They have so many 5-stars. They're ridiculous. I mean, first of all, who would want to go to UNC? I mean, have you ever been there?
No, it looks beautiful though.
Are you kidding me? Like, you get to wear Jordan too. Like, seriously, come on, man. Let's not even go there. But if Virginia puts it together, guys, it's a rough go. That Harvard loss becomes real bad, and they know that. So that's like, it's not like I am reinventing the wheel or telling you something that no one knows, right? But I think the ACC, you can't lose. And I think that Syracuse is a Final Four team? I absolutely do. I think they've covered up some things and got some play out of guys. I think will be very helpful moving into the playoffs. Again, you always have to keep ascending. Coach Simmons used to tell us we wanted to peak at the last game, at the last second of the last game of a national championship. Hopefully that's where we're peaking. And that's really hard to do in a long season. When your body gets banged up, you're never 100%. You're getting nicked up in practice. You start to get antsy at each other. I mean, I think some things that they could do is, maybe have some fights in practice. Some people call some people out. You see, you guys laugh. You're like, oh, that's great fodder. This guy goes, man. Like, you ask him a question, he'll go for an hour. No, I think great teams are built off being able to be mean to each other and respect each other and get over like those types of things. Nothing brings you together more than, a breakup to a makeup, right? And because you realize the things you did bad, and then you have more respect for each other. And, I was telling stories last night that I can't tell on air here. But those my teams that I won with, the teams that I had the least amount of talent were the teams I won championships with, because we all were friends. We got fights and we had all sorts of bad shit that we did together. Trust me. And, thank God there were no phones. There was no internet. Like back then, let's speak the truth. And, and we also had a coach that allowed us to be us. And I think Gary does do that, right? I also think, though, nothing against you guys. The media, social media, the regular media, fans, phones, they don't allow you to be sometimes who you are, right? And I think you need to be who you are in order to win. You're recruited at a very raw part of your life, which is your high school career. It's your rawest part, right? That's your rawest part when you're in high school. And then you get to college and all of a sudden there's bright lights and you get all a little bit like, what is going on here? And how can you deflect that? And it's hard to do that. I mean, think about it. Every day, Adrian Autry is being threatened to be fired on some social media post. And every day they're talking about how bad Syracuse basketball is. And it's just part of being Syracuse. I heard a guy tell me one time, Paul Carcaterra said to me, when you're a star at Syracuse, you're a star. And that had to do with lacrosse. And so if it comes with the territory, God bless us. But, Syracuse is a Final Four team, but they got to win out, I think.
Sounds good, Rick. Thank you so much for taking time on the pod. Great talking lacrosse with you. Could talk lacrosse
My
with you
favorite
all.
podcast. You
There we
kidding
go.
me?
We love to hear that. We love to hear
Ostrom
that.
podcast?
Love to
Pops
hear
up
it.
all the time on my phone.
Love to hear it. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm sure we will see you again sometime on the Ostrom Avenue podcast.
Go Ostrom podcast. Love it.